Hello, everyone. I am discussing today with Mrs. Judy Kuramata from Tokyo. She will present herself to us in brief in the first minutes of our discussion. And because some of you contributed questions, I will be very interested in finding out the answers, and I hope they will be helpful for you in the understanding of how public relations is being done practically in Japan. Every country has its own cultural specificities and maybe also the technical ways in which they do practically public relations. I'm always interested in finding out more. And, you know, it's even more interesting when you find it directly from the specialists, not only from the books. So thank you very much, Mrs. Kuramata. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, a good evening to you all, and thank you so much for inviting me, Professor Anastasia. My name is Judy Kuramata. I'm running a small agency in Tokyo. We just celebrated 24th anniversary last month. Doing PR in Japan will be slightly different from other countries. Of course, other countries, other means, not only the US, has a different culture background and different media background. And of course, the language they speak and the culture they face and the history, everything is different. So doing PR is you have to think about the target audience, who are the target audience. And if it's Japanese, mostly, you have to know about the Japanese things. My background is I spent almost like 20 years in client side as a marketing director, and which helps me a lot with doing the other side of the world. And my agency is more likely to specialize for the branding and strategies rather than the social media only digital company. We also do, but not whole. And we are more likely the planning and building the strategy, or everything is based on the marketing. And that's why we also cover the promotions and like a statement building or key message buildings, which is also a big part of the PR. And for the industry-wise, we have 3 different categories. One is leisure and hospitality, which is I'm in. I have more than 20 years in background in these industries. And the next category is a B2B businesses, which is more like a corporate PR. For you are representing some companies or you're representing government. It's totally different from consumer PR. And then lastly, but not least, which is more towards to the digital marketing. These days, within the last 10 years, not only Japan, but the whole world is changing to shift to Gen Z. So Generation Z and X, those are born to the digital world. So we cannot ignore, even though the senior management is like my age, who are only been in the digital for 20 years, but the kids are born to be. So that's the major things the PR industry is now cultivating. So we have 2 different categories, and we have the senior directors in each categories. And also, I want to talk about a little bit about the background for Japan as a PR market. As you probably know, the Asia is a huge continent. And if you're talking about the East Asia, which is Japan, China, and Korea, and then you have in the Southeast Asia, which is another major fast-growing countries, including like Thai, Vietnam, Malaysia, and of course Singapore. And then now you go to South, you have a big country which is India and Pakistan. and all those are Asian. But totally, we have 2,000 languages in those one continent. And then if you're talking about the history, China has more than 4,000 histories. Japan has like a 1,600 years of history. So it's a long history in each countries. All those cultural background, you have to know, you have to at least be aware of it for doing PR. And Korea, I think Korea and Japan are the two countries with having a singular language. The major language is Japanese for 100%. And then English is not a common language at all. And Korea, 100% Korean. But other than that, because they have a territory period, they speak more fluently in English. So those two are different. And then of course, China, they speak Chinese, but they have so many different languages in Chinese. So, so when you are doing, if you are doing the PR in Japan, you must understand Japanese. Okay. And then we have a small number of publications written in English. So if you are not familiar with the language itself, it's going to be a big trouble. Okay. And also the secondary, you have to understand about the culture and also the people. Within Asia, you have a very different category of human being, not only the blood type, but for example, Japanese are based on farming culture. So we are not hunter culture, like a Chinese or even Korean, they are hunting cultures. And then they are facing to the borders. We are not facing to the borders. We are middle of the ocean. So assuming that we have no enemy, okay. But other countries, they are historically fighting with the other peoples. So the mentality is different, okay. And then of course, Japanese, not 100%, but nearly 100% single blood, which is Japanese. Okay, so we have no racing issues, or we don't have, yes, of course, but it's not like US or other countries. We looking at the faces, he might be Korean Japanese, he might be Chinese Japanese, but looking at their faces, we think we are all Japanese. Okay, so if I go to St. Louis, maybe people has no question about me speaking other languages. For example, they will ask me in English without any questions, right? But here, we don't think anybody can speak other languages except Japanese, okay? And for media-wise, it's so interesting because the Tokyo is dominated for the mass communications. It's interesting that Japan has the most number of the publications in the world. We used to have more like 4,000 different publishing medias, which is a huge and not necessary to have that many. But I think we do love the printed materials still. And then another thing is which is quite important, we don't have a fake news. When fake news was like the huge thing in the States by your former president, we couldn't believe it because we haven't faced such a kind of a situation. That everything media says was not fake. That's our belief. So that's also different from other countries because the major publications, major mass communication has to be right. There's no fakes. for example, a country like Southeast Asia countries, because they don't have the right, they don't have the big publications, or it's also usually used as the propaganda. They are not believing in those mass medias. That's why a country like even Thailand, they strongly believe in social media rather than the publications on TVs. But it's totally different. I think it's only Japan and Korea believing a huge belief in mass communications. And talking about the social media as well, Japan is slightly different. We people are not tend to disclose ourselves. Okay, we are very, very shy people. And then when we, I mean, if you are holding like a debate, it's gonna take a couple of hours to get the first person start speaking in Japan. I mean, so it's so difficult to revealing yourself.
Yeah.
And so probably that's something interesting to your students. For youngsters, they usually have 5 different social accounts. And then one is your truth. And then the other 4 is your like a hidden accounts. You're just peeping somebody's account, or you're just talking to something so negatively. I mean, so they have a different tools to play with. I think that's really Japanese. And then we don't have, yes, we do have a LinkedIn, but nobody used. The Twitters are not commonly used for all ages. That tends to be popular for youngsters. The Facebook is probably the same as the US. It's more like a senior people for like over 40s. And yes, we do have a great usage of Instagram, but we don't have a WhatsApp, or we don't have Pinterest. I mean, we do, but very, very few people. Instead, we have a chat called Line, which is very popular. That I think that was developed in Korea, but majorly used in those countries.
How is it called? How is it called? Can you write in the chat?
Line.
Can you write in the chat?
Yes, of course.
Because I'm afraid I won't be able to tell the students who are not present at this meeting. And I'm sure Lily knows about this, but I don't.
Yeah, I know about that. I saw it in the movie, a lot in Korean movie.
Line, okay.
Yeah.
So it's similar to, what do they have in China? Weibo, or what is it called?
Yeah, China Weibo, yes. Because in China, if you go to China, there's no Google, there's no Facebook, that's banned. And then Weibo is developed in China and only being used China, and TikTok, yes, of course.
Mm-hmm.
So Line is I think it's the biggest in Japan. They have it's like combined with WhatsApp and Facebook and Twitter and everything included. So it's quite popular.
Yeah, I wanted to mention, if this is not in the recording, because I think it's recording just the face of the speaker, not the chat. It's spelled L-I-N-E. Okay.
Okay, I think I'm talking too much.
But only interesting things.
Thank you.
Okay, so should we go on by the questions? Do you want to read them? Do you want me to read them for you?
Please read it for me.
Okay, so I think we're using the same list. The first question was, how does the agency you work for measure their success in PR?
Yes, that's a very, very good question. And we don't have an answer to it. Because it's the value of PR is changing. Not every day, but very often. Used to be, it's called EVA, equivalent value for advertising, was the measurement. It means if you get the coverage for the full page of New York Times, you have to pay for X of amount if you advertise, right? So that's equivalency, that the free publicity you get equal to the advertising charges. That was one of the way the agency agency performance to show the client this is the achievement. But that theory has been changing a lot because there's a couple of reasons why. The number one reason is advertising. You can say anything you want if you pay for it, right? But the PR is different. You have someone to understand and then positively write about or talk about. So it has to be triple of the double of the value that you spend for the advertising. And then that kind of the understanding was very common in the States and some of the Europe for like 20 years ago. So the calculation was different from what we are doing in Japan and what we are doing in your countries. And also, what about if it's a negative coverage, but it's huge coverage? What do you think about this result? For example, one of my former clients says, well, we are one of the leading brand of this industry. So whether or not this is good or negative, we count them. We count as an achievement. But some of the clients says, oh, this is too negative and I don't want to represent this industry. So I don't want to count them. So that's really up to them, how the coverage will perceive them for them. So, and also it's nonsense to simply calculate the numbers equal to the advertising. So, yes, most of the country is still doing their calculations to show the performances, but the culture has been really changing. Instead, for example, for the digital media, you can actually see the achievement, like yes, push the like, or put the comment on, or share your the new topics. So that's really the action that's taken. So it's easier to show your performance to your client based on the digital. Otherwise, this is really interesting. PR agency tends to focus on KPI, not KPG, because KPG has to be done by the client. X amount of revenue you get or how many people you got, that's the end of the result. That goal should be lies to the activity the client are doing. But to support the client doing as an indication, XX amount of the coverage we have, or this great article we have, that's the indication to support the KPI. So
for those who do not know, what does the acronym KPI versus KPG means?
Okay, KPI is key indications to achieve your goals. Okay, KPG is the goal, key goals. So the goal, if you say that the goal is we want 1 million customers to come. Okay, so the KPI is an indication of the action that PR agency will take. So in order to get the end result for 1 million customers, we have an XX of the TV coverages, or we have an influencer topics posted online for 200 to support to achieve your goals.
Okay.
Understand? Okay.
Yes, yes. Yes. So how do you measure, for example, there were these discussions starting with the social media, when social media came into existence. People, were moving from measuring those inches of publication, as you were mentioning before, to the number of likes. But then they realized that the likes do not commute automatically into number of consumers. So is there a kind of measurement for social media reactions?
Yes, if you are only talking about the digital end result, yes, the agency will take those numbers for the performance achievements. And then that's probably easier to get the mutual understanding between the client and agencies. The performance is based on these numbers. But other than that, this is something we are doing. We have set some keyword or the phrases we want to put in the articles. So the achievement is how many keywords were included in the articles, or this phrase has been used or not, because that's the result we want to show to the audiences. So if we said the 10 keywords within the article, yes, we have 5 of them, you get the 50% of the achievements.
And do you combine, presence at events with also, comparing, let's say, the same period of time this year, how were you performing a year ago? And we can compare and say this year, your sales increased. And maybe you can claim that this is due to your intervention?
Well, PR is not directly related to your sales achievement. But if it's a sales promotion, yes. And then within the PR, this is somebody's questions. What's the common issues that are brought by clients that's similar to their questions to answer? Because usually the client doesn't have the way to resolve their problems. And for example, they don't have a new product, they don't have a new story, they don't have anything new, right? So the task of the responsibility by PR agency is to create something new, okay? So in order to make a new, even though the product has been born in 30 years ago, so nothing new, but if you are wearing different glasses, you see the different things. So from one product, you have to see different kind of the story angles. That's the key things the PR person have to do. Okay. So one of the achievement could be like this pen is only 100 yen pen, $1 pen, right? But what kind of story you can create it out of this one single piece of pen? And if you are talking to the long history, this is a long seller. That's one key. And this is a beautiful, beautiful made, custom made pen. And this is another key. This is, your writing looks fabulous with this pen. This is another key, right? So creating the new stories is one of the key tasks that PR agency have to do it. And then that's the common things we're being asked by the client.
Right. So you are working on improving the perception of the products and services.
Yes.
Okay.
So that's why that all goes to the branding. So if one product was born without any story making, without any tips background, it's only one piece of pen. But once we have a full story being built, and once it becomes the brand, and then it's the totally like creating different pen.
Okay.
So in order to make a beautiful branding pen, you have to combine with the events like the media education. That's one of the events we're doing every day, because the media should know about this pen. So the education to media is really important before you actually ask for him to write about the article.
Okay, okay. Should I move to the next question?
Oh, yes. Sorry, I'm
Okay,
talking.
okay, no problem, no problem. What kind of decisions do you make on a day-to-day basis?
That's a thrill for PR agency because PR cannot stop. And then, for example, the situation is changed every day in the world. If you have COVID is a good case. The situation is changing every day. So even though you have well-prepared article to read on the TV program, it will go away straight away if something new come up and take your places. So all those decisions means taking the priorities. Who is the best shot for the social? And what's the more value to the social, to the people? So the PI has to be dedicated to the social people, and that has to be beneficial to everybody in the world. So taking the priority is the higher priority you take.
Right, right. Let's move to the next one. What are the key elements involved in a creative plan that makes integrated communication successful?
Yeah, that's a good question. Thank you. I always said to my staff, especially young staff, you have to think in your right hand of your brain means creative, but acting with the left brain, which is tactics. So the PR person doesn't have to be either way. I mean, must be both way. Think about crazy things, but playing like a chess.
Mhm, mhm. So you have to be like a general, think strategically.
Yes, very, very much.
Okay. By the way, your agency is how big? How many employees?
We have 15 people in professional level, and we have 2 interns and 5 freelancers on contract.
And do you work sometimes for example, when you launch a new product, when you helped on the launch of a new product, do you buy services from others that are more specialized, like somebody very much specialized on advertising, or do you do it yourself?
We do it ourselves. We do have a subcontractor, like if we may need any specialized issue like law firms or medications, those kind of things. But we usually handle by ourselves.
Okay, okay. Yeah, so you would, how would you consider yourselves in the Japanese market of public relations agencies? Are you a small agency, medium-sized?
That's also a good question. It's so funny that the PR agencies in Japan, there are a couple of giants, but other than that, they're relatively small. Like I think we still think we are small agencies. We are calling ourselves as a boutique agency, but it's nearly like a 20 average. I think we are very average. And then the PR agencies tend to be specialized in a specific industry, like a fashion agency or IR agencies and digital agencies. They have no specialties.
Okay, okay. Let me move then to the next question, which says, how do you partner with businesses to support their growth and development?
I need answer. Well, we every week we get together and we share the ideas. We exchange your own project status, because even though we are a small group, but usually what's happening in PR agencies, because we are too busy and we never knew that person next to you are doing, or the problem I'm facing too. But the person next to me probably have an answer to me, right? So that's a good to have in a community. I mean, we're in a communication service. Why not communicate each other and be creative, or being stupid sometimes? So that really helps us to grow. And also when we have a new pitching means to get the new businesses, we usually do, who wants this job? Raise your hand. So we don't have somebody focus on a new project. Somebody raise your hand, you are responsible. So if somebody's doing an educational program at the same time like a corporate PR, maybe she wants to do something else, or maybe she wants to concentrate on a business to business account. So that's all up to them to challenge something else.
Okay. Let's move on. What does a typical consultation look like with the client?
How do you grow my business is usually the questions we get. And then, like I said, this is too old and the sales has been declining. We don't have advertising budget. We don't have a new product, and help me. And that's a typical things.
And what do you say? We are not miracle workers?
So let's say, why don't we take a good look about your services or product, and like if I have it's like a marriage, or it's like a dating somebody. Like you spend a couple of months and you think you like that guy really much, and then after the couple of months you're getting used to, and then you are getting blind to see what's the beauty of him. So let's get back.
I understand.
So the beauty of doing PR is finding charms.
And from what I understand from you, that means that you sit down with them and you try to jolt their memory and say, hey, have you improved something with this product in the past decade? What do you think you can bring new, right?
Yes. We ask the clients to have an interview, as many as we could. Not only the person developed the product, but for most of the stakeholders. The stakeholders means not only within the client company, we relate to their company in having the mutual benefit, which means could be employee, could be neighborhood, could be suppliers, could be the student might be becoming employee. So we try to have many voices from stakeholders. Also press, yes.
Right. Do you ask them to look at the competition and adapt, or do something better than the competition?
Well, we don't ask to them to do it, but we do. When we do the new project, the first thing we start with is press hearings. Get the press know, and what do you think, and or what's the issues? It's called SWOT. You probably know.
Sure.
And we start with the SWOT, and on top of it, the press hearing, especially with the trade press or the consumer press. It really depends if your project And then, so that's why our business is always start from marketing point of view.
Right.
So yes, we do study competitions.
Yes, let's ask the students, because Lily is an undergraduate and Millie Pinsky, who's here present, is a graduate student. So do you all know what SWOT means?
I'm sorry, I don't know about that.
I don't remember what the acronym is, but after doing my senior project, we did it like 30 times. So I could probably put one together for you, but I couldn't tell you what SWOT.
So it's a strong.
It was a long year.
strong weak points, opportunities, and threats.
Yes.
Right. So it's an assessment of what is your asset, what can you use, what is your competition, when you want to launch a product, is there a bigger event than yours that is going to take from your audience? What is the environment? Is it going to rain? You know, when we do PR campaigns with our PR students, and we usually try to find them a real client, and we always take into consideration the lousy weather in St. Louis in the spring, because if we are going to plan with a budget of, I don't know, between $200 and $2,000, $5,000, we had such clients. Then we're going to organize an event that is outside and it's in April. Usually it rains in St. Louis, or the cold time weather comes back. So you don't want to waste everything and keep a second possible date for the event. Right? So, okay, coming back to our specialist from Japan, let's see what questions we have here. The company profile states that every culture or country has a unique value to societal networks. How does the business culture in the United States compare to that of Japan?
I had a chance to talk at the Seattle Commercial Institute or something the other day. What's the protocol doing businesses to Japanese client, or what's anything that we as in US people we have to be aware of when doing the business with the Japanese people. For example, it's a great difference between US and Japan, especially with the cultural background. For example, probably you guys speak about the result first. I mean, that's more the result driven, while Japanese tends to put the focus more on the process. So we don't, and especially we don't talk the result from the beginning. So that's a huge difference.
Right. So you want the people to appreciate the creativity and the effort?
Yeah. Okay. At the end, it might fail. That's okay.
Okay, right. So if we are to go into cultural idiosyncrasies, you know, everybody I think has in mind the movie Lost in Translation, right?
I was in charge.
You were in charge of that? Wow. It was all the time when somebody else was coming over there in Japan, when they were meeting him on the filming set at Santorin, right?
Yeah.
They were always coming with a little present, with a little sample of whiskey, with a little, you know, it's like always when we meet and greet, you offer something to that person. Is it something that is done culturally in Japan all the time?
Yes. And it was very interesting when the Lost in Translation was filming, because I was in charge for the Park Hyatt Tokyo as a PR. And then we have kept refusing to do the filming to Sofia Coppola because we had a higher priority put on the customers, not the filming. And then after pushing back and forth, we finally decided if you can do the filming in 2 weeks, only in a hotel room, that's fine. So that was a very, very memorable things. Yes, you have to really be aware of the Japanese custom. One is don't go straight. It's not hiding, just to be polite. Okay, so Japanese don't want to argue, don't want to debate, don't want to against. Even you are against somebody's opinion, you have to accept first. Okay, because everybody has a different opinions, don't against it. And also it's so difficult to and also this is similar to the Korean culture as well, because the Korean and Japanese has the religious background, the same religious background, which is respect elder people, okay, and elder and higher, senior. So it doesn't have to be age-wise, but yes, you have to respect. So if your client in the agency, you have in a certain position that the client is respecting the client. And then, and also seniority is a very big key. So don't speak before your boss is speaking. Okay. And then at the Chamber of Commerce in Seattle, I said, don't cross your legs. Okay. Your president, US president is often crossing his legs in front of everybody, but it's so rude to Japanese. What else? If you're doing business to business situation, you usually hold your business card and you have to exchange, because Japanese mind, I have to remember your name and title correctly. Because that's the manner of it. And then we don't call you first name, right? So those things, the formula is very important. In order to keep the formula, we usually change the business card, which is easier to remember the whole thing, right? And then so the seniority and or the politeness, those are the key elements before you start business.
Yeah, I see in the chat that my student Lily from Vietnam says that it is the same with Vietnam. When you were mentioning that in Japan and in South Korea, there's this rule of respecting your elders.
Yes, and Thailand too. Yeah, when I was I was visiting Vietnam, I feel so happy because we have the same culture.
Okay. Let me see here. So moving to the next question. How do you personally quantify the success of the businesses you work with?
My success of business is proved by my everyday performance, which is continuously doing for 24 years. And then the appreciation of having long committed clients is also very honorable. One of the longest clients is 22 years, which is almost start from the beginning. And also usually new business comes from the inquiries from former clients, which is also very privileged. So the PR business on the whole, it's totally relations and trust.
Okay.
And I usually tell my people that if you don't need any background, like I'm representing, I'm in charge. Take those out. I'm only Judy Kuramata. And if the press people want to see me, or press people calling me without having, I'm representing something. So the press has finding value in me. But if you are only available to have a meeting with the press people, as long as, only if you are representing some brand, that's not you, that's the brand. So the PR person must be without any title. If your person is valuable as a PR, doesn't matter what kind of a brand you're representing.
Yeah, I think the question was referring more to, how do you personally quantify the success of the clients that you have? How can you say that your collaboration with a certain client was a successful one? Did they increase their bottom line? Are they now seen by more people? Do they have a bigger number of people browsing their website or going on social media or reading the article about them? Do you have such software that measures such indicators?
Yes. I think the everything you mentioned, yes. And also we have created our original formula that to count. This is come from this article, and this relates to, for example, if one article posted on the digital and it goes out from other digital, that's also the number of the count that news spreads.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you said, if you take as an indicator the number of new clients, new consumers of the product, that is more linked to sales, right? But how do you measure your success? How do you think you are satisfied with the work that your agency has done for the benefit of a client?
Well, when we set the KPI, like a number of coverages on such media or number of quotes, it means bylines, what we call bylines.
Mm-hmm.
Bylines are coverages or in-depth interviews or what else? The comment on social medias.
Mm-hmm.
Or the comment from press hearings. So we put the numbers, X number of coverage on digital, X number of in-depth interviews, X number of bylines, X number of social media outlets.
It's interesting to me that you didn't mention surveys. You do not use too often surveys?
No, that's client does, because we are not hearing from the consumers. The PR agency is targeted to the media.
Right. Okay, let's go to another question. It says, what are some things school cannot teach you about your job? i.e., what are things you have learned from experience?
There are a lot.
Can you give us an example or two?
Yes, of course. For example, in school, I was a major in marketing, so I know very well how it worked. You can learn from a book, and also you can plan the PR plan, or you can take a measurement on desk. But the reality is so different. For example, I have gone through with this one piece of press release for many times and ready to dismiss. It happens. I mean, for example, I set the interview to one of the key people and he declined one day. That happens. So the whole thing will gone so fast. Or also the PR is not advertising, as I said. So if you want to say this, it's not going to be happening sometimes. And so that the PR is not only the preparation, it's really how you take the countermeasure at once. So it's in other words, it's instant decision making. And then, for example, if you're doing crisis management in PR, that's really critical. We have many cases during the COVID because COVID happens without any notice, right? So the whole news was prepared for the product launch, but the company has COVID new cases, and then that has to be gone, right? So one thing is how do we handle with the new product has to be launched today? It's already gone. But on the other hand, how to handle the COVID situation within the company? That's another issue just to jump in. So it's really like a juggling. Don't drop anything, and then bola keep just coming.
Right. And especially if you mentioned crisis situations, that means that you don't have a day or a night, right? Because they will
No,
at any time.
24 hours. And then within the 24 hours, you have to making decisions every minute. And that's all parallel. One thing is how to respond to press, making the statement, and the training to the speakers, and then like a question and answers for the press conferences, those happening at once. And everything has to be in like 2 hours.
Right. Okay, let's move to another question. Does the work environment in Japan compare to the ones of other countries, and do differences in work environment cause differences in regards to PR? I think you mentioned some of the things.
Yes, and even though the COVID situation, we are still working to the office, not working from home. I think it's one of the things is a very cultural thing. We are not happy with being alone at home, even though we don't look like a very socialized people. I think people will feel secure to go to the office and having somebody around. And also that's for the senior people, we still believe that that's the manner that the employee have to follow. And also Japanese are not really, that's a negative thing. So we are not really independent, I think. So we are really dependent on the group. So that's why we don't talk too much, but we feel too much. So like we probably prefer that circumstances.
Yeah, I have read that, for example, young professionals in Japan are known to work themselves to exhaustion. There are situations in which you can find a young man dressed in a suit, and maybe they fall on the side of the sidewalk of exhaustion, or they just sit down to sleep because they are extenuated, So is this still happening in Japan?
No, fortunately, no. That really happened when I was young. And then we usually get on a train very late, like 11 o'clock, and dead sleep and miss the train again. That really happened. But no, not anymore. And especially with the COVID, nothing.
Okay, so people learn to take care of themselves better?
Yes.
Okay. Does culture have a major impact on how people in Japan do their PR? I guess it's by the same student. So I guess you covered this, right?
Yes.
Okay, somebody else asks here, actually, Milipinski, who's present in the discussion. In your biography, your work in the fashion and cosmetics industry is mentioned. What can you tell us of the differences between this type of PR work across the world? How does it differ and what are some of the similarities?
Thank you for asking. That's a really interesting question. Because when I was representing Chanel cosmetic in Japan, that was something really, really different. The French brand says the PR is not a strategy. You have to read between the lines. We don't build a building. We are painting on canvas. I mean, that's those things are totally different from what I learned from the States. Okay, so the cosmetic and fashion is more like a between the lines, not straightforward. But while like other things like a more straightforward, more strategic. And then I think PR originally has to happen on both sides. As I said, the right brain and left brain. So not only be creative, but you have to have a background or rationale to prove it. And then on the other hand, if you're talking on the specifications only, you get bored. So you need some fragrances onto it. So yes, the similarity is, yes, you need to have the both, be creative and be strategic. But on the other hand, doing PR in those fancy area compared to like a B2B businesses are totally different because the target are different. The target audience for the luxury things, they tends to have an emotional aspect only. They don't care about how much you spend out of the cost. Or but on the other hand, the B2B businesses or corporate PR are different because the target are different. Target are investors, or target to the at the manufacturer point of view, or at the specific point they are featuring. So who are your target? It depends on the target audience. The strategy you take are different, even though the PR.
Yeah, yeah.
Can I expand on that just a little, Dr. Nastasia?
Yes, please, please.
Thank you. I'm a huge Japanese culture enthusiast as well. So
Thank you.
I mean, I'm American, but to the sense of I love studying other cultures, though I've never been anywhere. I know here in America, they pinpoint very young with cosmetics and with fashion. I have a 10-year-old daughter that is obsessed with finding the newest thing. Is that something done in Japan as well with the branding that we like is the branding kind of the same or is it different?
I think it's different. I think it's different, and also if you are the fan of Japanese culture, you probably know the word kawaii. That's exactly the word representing the branding for youngsters.
She just had a birthday and everything that she received was kawaii. So yes, I'm very familiar.
So what does it mean, kawaii?
That's a really useful word. Kawaii can be cute, kawaii can be sweet, kawaii can be tender, kawaii can be, I mean, kawaii can be used for the woman in 80s. Nice or elegant, could be anything. So that's a really easy and catchy word that you can use, play with.
Thank you so much for your answer.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay, but I guess you have also specialized magazines that are dedicated for a certain age.
Yes.
Right? For teens, for people in their 20s, and so on and so forth. And
yeah,
I'm
and also what we call junior high school girls culture. That's a really strong. High school girls, they are making trends.
Do they dress as characters in anime? Do they?
Yeah, yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Right.
They're dressing like a schoolgirl's uniform.
Yeah.
Even though they don't have a uniform, they are with the uniform and going out.
Yeah, I want to tell you that I have my wife. We are both from Romania, and she has a very good friend who has a daughter who's now 20, 21. And while in high school, she was following these trends from Japan, and she has even participated in a competition. And she went to Japan, and now she's studying somewhere in Great Britain, but she was very much into dressing like a Japanese teenager, and it's a cultural trend now. I've seen it with many people.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's ask one last question, because you're I don't want to keep you more than you promised. You'll stay with us, and I'm sure that you are a busy person. But
I'm fine.
because Lily is in the discussion, Le Phong Tu from Vietnam, I have her question here. What to do next if crisis resolution doesn't work? Should we keep silent or do something else?
You always have to talk. Don't be silent. If you keep your mouth shut, you're end of it. And then you have to be open to everybody. And that's the transparency is the huge element doing PR.
Right. So that means that if you are silent, people will imagine that you accept to be guilty.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, it's the same done in the United States, but you know, if you look around the world, many times CEOs forget about this, and they take care of the I don't know, first of all, of they want to save face rather than saving the company. So they forget about the rules of, being public within the first 24 hours of a crisis event, and being out with it, and open, and apologizing if something from the public domain was ruined, or somebody was affected, or somebody was injured. You have to apologize very fast and say how you will address the issue.
Right. So when you're doing the crisis PR, what's more important is find the facts. The first action you have to take is finding the truth and get the facts. And then secondary, you take the countermeasurement. Without knowing the facts, you cannot do anything. And then finally, to get socialized, which is connect with the people. I mean, the PR is really having relations with the public. That's a PR. So without having the relations, you fail the PR. So in order to get that, you need to get trust. And in order to get trust, you need the facts. And that's a very strategy things. And then finally, you have an emotions, which is apology. And not only the apology, but you have to have a heart. You not only say, I'm sorry, but you have to truly feel sorry. And then so that's very difficult when we are doing the crisis management training to client, because they try to understand from here, but at the end of the day, the PR has to talk from the bottom of your heart, and the PR is so emotional. So in order to get emotion, you have to be strategic.
So I'm curious, because we're discussing about crisis situations, and I have contributed a few years ago a chapter together with two of my colleagues concerning the triple damage that was done at the with the tsunami and the earthquake and the destruction of the atomic central close to Tokyo, right?
Yeah.
How old? I don't recall now.
Fukushima.
Fukushima, right. So I wrote a chapter in a book about that. Actually, I bought the copyright to use two images in the chapter from a Japanese company that was located in New York. I was wondering if you're talking about thinking with your brain, but also feeling it in your heart from the point of view of a Japanese PR counselor. But in the United States, there's also this perception that sometimes PR is spin, and these terms of white, gray, black PR. So is it even possible in Japan? Do people do it, or are they afraid of public opprobrium?
I think it's slightly different from the States. And then we don't have a negative PR here. It's so interesting when I was watching the presidential campaign of the US president. People are doing negative PR against the competitor. We don't have it at all. And then we don't have a black PR either. And we don't even have the public affairs done by PR agencies, that only done by internal administrations. So in that sense, it's quite different.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know. Okay, one last question here. I see, what is the difference between PRGN in Japan and PRGN in other countries like the US?
It's always fun to have the colleagues around the globe for the PRGN because we have so many different cultures. And then we have, before COVID, we have annual meeting hosted by members. So we go around the globe. And then for some certain countries, they have a political crisis every so often, or they don't have the trusted media, or they still even have a propaganda. So those are the countries that are so different from the Western countries. Or if they want to do doing PR in China, it's so different. And then, for example, especially in the States, we have more than 20 members PRGN within the States. And then I personally see the differences between those members in the States. See?
Sorry, I couldn't hear you. There was an interruption.
Oh, okay. Even within the United States, we have more than 20 members. But they are all different. You cannot say U.S. agency. It depends on D.C. agency and Alabama agency and then Nebraska. I mean, all different. So having the PRGN is a great network because we have a difference, and also we have a way to do it differently. Some of the agency need to have support from Japan. Yes, we are contributing to them. And the difference is, yes, we have a difference in culture and background, but most likely what we are doing as business is the same. And also difference is the audience, not the business, I think.
Mm-hmm.
For example, using because of the audience background is different, so the vehicle we use for social media would be different. For example, you have a podcast and we don't have it, and yes, we do, but it's not commonly used. So if the US agency says, well, why not having podcast campaign? We don't do it. That's a difference. So because the consumer background or business background are different, so the tools are different, but the way of thinking is not too much different.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you were mentioning that, even in the United States, the way in which they do public relations in different parts of the country, in Nebraska versus New York, it's much different. And it makes sense because there's a different population, there are other cultural idiosyncrasies. And I think you mentioned to us, but in the discussion before I started recording, and I want this to be recorded, you said that in Japan, really public relations is done in a certain way in the capital, in Tokyo, right? But are there agencies all around the country, or and that do they follow the example of the capital, or do they do things differently in Osaka versus I don't know, remote island somewhere?
Okay, Japan is the Tokyo focus. And then because the major publications are all in Tokyo. And then I think it's nearly 70 of the business economy is driven by Tokyo. So it's so much Tokyo oriented. And yes, we do have the agencies and TVs and prints and everything in around the nations. But it's, yes, geographically we do have it, but not as a business power. So if you're doing the business in PR, you must be in Tokyo. You might probably have a branch or liaison in other cities, but there's a few business chances or no focus. It should be put on the other side of the country.
Okay, okay. So one last question here. Again, coming back to Emily Pinsky, with the upcoming Olympics being held in Tokyo, what are some advantages and disadvantages of the events being held there when it comes to your work?
It's so critical right now because some of the sponsors wants to withdraw because the contributing to the Olympics may not help in the support of the business or the branding because the people are not willing to have an Olympic Games at the moment. So why not supporting the something people don't want to? And also, right now we are representing Tokyo Festival, which is an art festival, starting from the parallel together with the Olympic Games, which is a really unique things that having the artists around the globe to corroborate or take some inspiration out of the athlete of the Olympic into their artwork. So it's originally the objective of having that festival is when we get the people around the globe, why not only enjoy the Olympics, but why not introducing our culture or art or places or nature? So that's the project, how it gets started. But unfortunately, because of the COVID, the artists cannot come, or we don't even have a great supporter to the Olympic Games. So that from the PR wise, it's been changing the tone of the manner of how to support Olympic by as a client, as a sponsor, a huge difference between if it's a good to support or it's even negative influence to the brand. So we are taking all those measurements into the account to whether we take an action or do we have to announce that the sponsor withdrawal by the client is officially announced to be announced, or no, it's no good to. So it's still ongoing conversation every day.
Well, I thank you very much for the time that you dedicated to discuss with me and with my students and consider the questions. I think we learned a lot from you. And you mentioned that because of your son studying first at McMaster, going to Purdue, you came many times to St. Louis. So
Yes.
have you been to the Festival of Nations ever?
No.
It's usually in July, August.
August.
So August, right? They're just preparing now, and I got involved with them in the past years, but last year, you know, there was nothing, and now I don't have the time, so I won't go this year. Okay.
I really want to go there. Yeah, please some pics.
Yes, yes, yes. And when you will you ever come again in this area, or?
Oh yes, yes. I'm hopefully planning to go to the Indiana and afterwards to visit St. Louis again to say bye. Hope after my vaccination is done.
Right, right, right. Okay. Again, thank you very much for your time. And it's weird to understand that for you, it's tomorrow. It's
Thank you so much for your long night.
14 hours later, right?
It's 10 o'clock in the morning.
For us, it's 8:17 p.m. We are your yesterday.
Yes, yes. So I'm going to have a weekend. Yes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Professor.
Bye.
Enjoy.
Bye.